In the complex dynamics of power, one concept stands above the rest: the mastery of silence. Many people mistakenly believe that power resides in words and in the ability to speak frequently, but true authority is held by those who know when to remain silent. This principle, articulated by Machiavelli, underscores the idea that silence, far from being a sign of weakness or passivity, is an active tool for control. In a world where information is exchanged constantly, words can be weapons, sharp, revealing, and often damaging. Silence, on the other hand, is a weapon of its own, capable of achieving far more than an endless barrage of words. Knowing when to speak and when to say nothing at all is a sign of power, wisdom, and strategic foresight. The modern world has a tendency to underestimate the significance of silence, with many people filling every gap in conversation with words in an effort to avoid discomfort or to maintain their place in the dialogue. Silence creates tension, and this discomfort is something that many fear. Yet in that tension, much can be learned. By remaining silent, you allow others to expose their true intentions, their weaknesses, and their strategies. In politics, business, and personal interactions, understanding this dynamic can be the difference between controlling the conversation and being controlled by it. Machiavelli, in his writings, often emphasized the importance of observing before speaking, of reading the room and the people within it. He recognized that words have power, but they also have consequences, and speaking recklessly can expose one's vulnerabilities. He believed that a leader's strength came not from being the loudest or the most vocal, but from knowing when to withhold their thoughts and when to let others reveal themselves. This concept is integral to the art of strategy. It is not about hiding your thoughts out of fear, but about using the power of silence to observe, understand, and control. In his famous work, The Prince, Machiavelli pointed out that a ruler must never make themselves too transparent. Transparency invites manipulation, while strategic silence creates an aura of control and mystery. Those who reveal too much through their words risk offering their adversaries the tools to counter them, to turn their own words against them. Silence, conversely, allows for patience, for waiting, and for observing the unfolding of events. It is through this controlled silence that true power is often exerted. Moreover, silence is not simply a passive retreat, it is an active choice. The wise understand that information is power, and that sharing information recklessly diminishes its value. In politics, business, and war, the one who controls the flow of information holds the upper hand. But even more so, the one who can make others reveal their hand while keeping their own cards close to their chest is in the strongest position. Silence, when wielded strategically, forces others to talk, to expose themselves, to reveal their intentions before the silent one even speaks a word. This tactic is not new, nor is it limited to the realm of political or military leaders. Everyday interactions, whether in business negotiations or personal relationships, are governed by the unspoken rules of power and control. The individual who knows when to remain silent has a distinct advantage over those who feel compelled to speak at every moment. Words are not just means of communication, they are instruments of influence. And just as with any tool, they can either be wielded with precision or recklessly used, leading to unintended consequences. Those who speak excessively often do so out of insecurity, the need for validation, or simply to fill the silence that makes them uncomfortable. But in doing so, they often reveal more than they intend. They expose their desires, their weaknesses, and their plans. Meanwhile, the silent individual, calm and composed, exudes confidence and authority. Their silence speaks volumes, not out of passivity, but because it allows them to remain in control of the situation, to observe and understand without offering anything that could be used against them. This principle is fundamental in Machiavellian thought. True power lies in the ability to control one's own actions, especially the act of speaking. The most powerful leaders are not those who speak the most, but those who speak the least, and when they do speak, do so with purpose and strategy. It is through silence that a person can build an image of authority and confidence. It is through silence that they can manipulate the course of events, pushing others to reveal their own plans, to expose themselves in ways that leave them vulnerable. To understand the value of silence is to understand the nature of control. It is not about being mute, but about knowing when to remain quiet, when to withhold your thoughts, and when to allow others to fill the space with their own words. Silence creates an opportunity for observation and assessment. It forces others to act, to speak, to fill the void. And in doing so, they often give away more than they intend. Machiavelli's teachings on this subject are timeless. His understanding of silence as a strategic tool is as relevant today as it was in his time. In a world that is increasingly dominated by the need to be heard, to have a voice, those who understand the power of silence are the ones who truly control the narrative. The individual who speaks only when necessary, who listens more than they talk, and who understands the value of restraint is the one who holds the advantage. Power does not lie in making oneself heard, but in choosing when to speak and when to remain silent. This is a fundamental truth in the study of power dynamics, and it is a principle that Machiavelli recognized and wrote about extensively. Silence is not simply a lack of speech. It is a conscious decision to withhold, to observe, and to wait for the right moment to act. In politics, business, and everyday life, those who know how to manage silence are often the ones who hold the reins of power. The act of speaking is a delicate one. Each word carries weight, and once it is spoken, it cannot be taken back. Words have the power to either strengthen one's position or undermine it. Those who speak too much often expose themselves, revealing their plans, their weaknesses, and their desires. On the other hand, those who know when to remain silent force others to reveal their cards, to expose their intentions. They gain the upper hand by controlling the flow of information, by manipulating the conversation without ever uttering a word. In business negotiations, for example, silence can be a powerful tool. The individual who remains calm and composed, who does not rush to fill every moment of silence with words, is often perceived as more confident and in control. This perception is not just an illusion, it is rooted in the reality of power dynamics. When someone speaks too much, they reveal their uncertainties, their desires, and their vulnerabilities. When they remain silent, they project authority, confidence, and control. In Machiavelli's view, this ability to remain silent is a form of wisdom. The wise leader does not rush to speak, does not feel the need to constantly offer their thoughts and opinions. Instead, they observe, they listen, and they wait for the right moment to act. This is the essence of strategic power. It is not about speaking in half measures, but about speaking only when it is truly necessary, when the words will have the greatest impact. The modern world, however, has lost sight of this principle. In a world where everyone is constantly seeking attention, where social media platforms reward the loudest voices, the art of silence is often overlooked. People post their thoughts without thinking, reveal their personal lives without hesitation, and speak without considering the consequences of their words. In doing so, they expose themselves, giving away their power to those who understand the value of silence. Machiavelli's teachings remind us that silence is not a weakness, it is a strength. Those who understand when to speak and when to remain silent are the ones who truly hold control. They do not need to prove their knowledge with endless speeches or words. Their silence speaks for them, creating an aura of mystery, authority, and power. In the game of power, those who speak the least often have the most to gain. To master silence is to master oneself. It is to understand the power of words, the consequences of speech, and the value of restraint. It is to understand that sometimes the most powerful move is to say nothing at all. In the world of power dynamics, those who know when to remain silent are the ones who hold the keys to success, influence, and control. The art of silence is far more than just avoiding speech. It is about controlling the flow of information, observing others, and understanding the right time to speak. Silence allows a person to step back, assess the situation, and calculate their next move with precision. Those who speak without thinking are often the ones who find themselves at a disadvantage. Their words expose their intentions, their plans, and their weaknesses. In contrast, Those who master silence can remain a step ahead, as their silence forces others to reveal more than they would like. Machiavelli recognized that in any power struggle, whether in politics, business, or even personal relationships, information is the most valuable asset. The one who holds the most knowledge holds the most power. But knowledge is a double-edged sword. When shared recklessly, it loses its value. This is why true strategists understand the importance of withholding information, of letting others expose themselves first. By staying silent, they maintain control of the situation, while others unknowingly give away the very tools that could be used to undermine them. This principle applies not only to power struggles but to everyday interactions as well. How often do we speak simply to fill silence, to make ourselves feel relevant or heard? How often do we feel the need to justify our actions, to prove our worth? In these moments, we reveal more about ourselves than we intend. The one who remains silent, however, creates an aura of mystery. They exude confidence and authority simply by withholding their thoughts, by allowing others to do the talking. In the end, it is not the loudest voice that commands respect, but the one who knows when to remain silent. This dynamic is particularly evident in business and negotiations. In these environments, the one who speaks the least is often the one who holds the most control. The person who speaks constantly risks showing their hand, revealing their intentions and making themselves vulnerable. The one who remains silent, on the other hand, can read the room, understand the motivations of others, and wait for the right moment to make their move. In this way, silence becomes a strategic advantage. Machiavelli's view of silence is not about being mute or passive, but about using silence as a tool for dominance. It is a way of creating space for others to expose themselves, while maintaining the power to act when the time is right. This does not mean avoiding all conversation, but rather knowing when to withhold, when to step back, and when to observe. The silent person is often seen as more powerful, not because they are necessarily wiser, but because their silence projects confidence and control. Silence allows for a deeper understanding of others, and in turn, a more calculated response. Another aspect of Machiavelli's philosophy is the idea that words, once spoken, cannot be undone. They can never be taken back or forgotten. This is why silence is a form of protection. It gives a person time to think, to calculate the impact of their words, and to decide if speaking is truly necessary. Those who speak recklessly or without thought risk making irreversible mistakes. A well-placed silence, on the other hand, can prevent these mistakes and maintain one's position of power. The modern world, with its obsession with constant communication and the need to be heard, often overlooks the strategic value of silence. People speak without thinking, post their opinions without considering the consequences, and expose themselves in ways that Machiavelli would have deemed reckless. In a world where everyone competes for attention, those who understand the power of silence are the ones who truly hold control. They do not need to make their presence known through endless chatter. Their silence speaks for them, creating an air of authority and mystery that is far more effective than any verbal declaration. In the realm of politics, silence is a particularly potent tool. A politician who speaks too much risks revealing their true intentions, their vulnerabilities, and their plans. A politician who knows when to remain silent, however, can build an image of authority and wisdom. They are perceived as in control, as someone who speaks only when it is necessary, and as someone whose words carry weight. This is why silence is often the most powerful tool in the political strategist's arsenal. It is a form of communication that transcends words, and in its absence, others are forced to reveal their own intentions. Furthermore, Machiavelli's teachings highlight the importance of patience and timing. Silence allows for reflection, for waiting for the right moment to act. It is not about rushing into a situation or reacting impulsively, but about taking the time to understand the situation fully before making a move. The most successful individuals are those who can observe and listen, who can read the subtle signals that others give off when they speak too much or expose too much. It is these individuals who, through the strategic use of silence, can influence outcomes and shape events without ever having to raise their voice. Patience, prudence, and silence are the cornerstones of strategic thinking. In the game of power, those who speak too much reveal their hand too early. Those who remain silent, however, hold the cards. They control the narrative, they control the flow of information, and they control the conversation. The power of silence is not just in its ability to protect, it is in its ability to manipulate the environment, to force others to act on your terms, and to position oneself as the true authority in any situation. In the end, the most profound question is whether you are the master of your words or whether your words have mastered you. In a world where everyone is vying for attention and validation, those who understand when to speak and when to remain silent are the ones who hold the true power. Machiavelli's teachings on silence are not about advocating for muteness, but about recognizing the immense power that lies in restraint. By mastering silence, you gain control not only over your own actions but over those around you.